I think some of the key lessons of the past 10 years is that the international community as a whole can mobilize when it wants to. It can mobilize very quickly when it wants to. It also recognizes that sovereignty as kind of the Westphalian conception of control is insufficient to meet some of the commitments that it has to human rights. And so blending human rights with the notion that sovereignty is not just merely about what I can do inside my own borders and no one else can tell me what to do is really important. Because those two things, the commitment to human rights as well as kind of the acknowledgement that borders are not the total game anymore, that opens up many more opportunities for different types of global problems, solutions to global problems, as well as upholding human rights. I don't think they're actually the most important ones. I think depending upon the version of RTP that you're working from. So the 2001 International Commission on Intervention in State Sovereignty's report on R2P is really clear in different types of response actions. That doesn't really get acknowledged too much in the 2005 outcome document. So I think some of the novel things that the 2001 report looks at are these kind of coercive measures that don't go all the way to intervention. So I think that's really important, is kind of understanding the entire foreign policy playbook that states have, as well as noting that the responsibility to protect is not just about coercive activities, right? It's a whole umbrella framework. And so the novelty here, right, is drawing off of all of the different things going on in the international community in terms of capacity building, in terms of state building, post-conflict reconstruction, transitional justice. And so all of these things are interrelated. And I think R2P is really novel in the fact that it recognizes that conflict is a cycle. And it touches on every single one of these things. And so unless you address all of these things, you're not going to have a complete picture. So I think that's really the novelty of RTP, is utilizing all of these different narratives, all of these different problems, and then bring them under one umbrella. Well, I think it's a confluence of factors, right? So there's clearly the political dynamic between the fact that Syria has major power allies between Russia and Iran. And so the geopolitical context of powerful allies is going to be at work. The second aspect of this is that operationally Syria is a different type of conflict than Libya. So for example, you can impose a no-fly zone much easier in Libya than you can in Syria, just given the fact that Gaddafi didn't really have the air force that Assad has. You also have the fact that the terrain is fundamentally different in Libya. You can do ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance in both, but when you have big flat sea plains, there's not a lot of hiding that can happen when you have just a giant flat plain, whereas in Syria you have mountainous regions, very clustered, you've got caves and things like this. And so they're just fundamentally different operationally as well as politically. There was a serious political will to intervene in Libya, and there was not that political will. In fact, there was a backlash for various reasons in Syria. And then just operationally, they're different. You would face a larger force in Syria. You would face a much better armed force in Syria, and these types of things.